Hello and welcome. I'm Micah, the cosplayer seamstress. Today we are going to be doing part 3 of the Little Red Riding Hood costume, which is the first part of the hood. But before that, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel.
The materials I will need are thread, one 2-inch buckle with prong, fabric, interfacing, the pattern with directions, scissors, both fabric and paper, a sewing machine, and a handheld needle. If you would like to know where I got these materials and how much they cost, check out my patterns and plans video for Little Red Riding Hood. The first step to any pattern project is to cut out the pieces that you will need for your design. I will be doing design A with this cloak pattern. This means, looking at the pattern directions, I will need pieces 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 10. While the pattern does say that I need piece 8, I chose not to use that piece as I did not have enough fur fabric and I did not want the fur to go all the way down the sides of the cloak. Once I determined the pattern pieces I needed, I cut them out of the thin pattern paper. On this pattern there are no sizes, so I will simply be cutting the pattern along the cut lines. Then I will reference the pattern for the cutting layout. I will be doing design A. According to the pattern, I will need to set the fabric up so that I have salvages at the top and bottom, creating a double thickness. All that being said, I did not follow the cutting layout as it appears here, beyond just setting it up so that the salvages are at the top and the bottom. Once I had the fabric set up, I pinned the pattern pieces into the fabric. Each pattern piece tells you how many of that piece you need and where to cut it, so I did cut the fabric according to that. While cutting the fabric, remember to cut your notches and place your dots. I place my dots with a pin until I can mark it with a fabric safe pin or pencil. Next, I will set up the machine. If you're not sure how to make a bobbin match your thread or how to thread the machine or bobbin, check out my sewing machine walkthrough video. I will be using burgundy thread on this part so that it matches the fabric. Try to always match your thread to the fabric unless you are wanting the thread to stand out. Now I'll be referencing the pattern for the directions. Step 1 reads, stay stitch neck edges of front 1 or 15, side front 2, and back 3 sections, 1/2 inch 1.3 centimeters from cut edge in direction of arrows. This stitching stays in permanently and helps prevent stretching on curved edge. Stay stitching will not be shown in the following directions. The illustration looks like this. Basically, stitch the top edge of each of the pieces of the curves according to the image shown. It will remain in permanently, so remember to backstitch. Also, in all of the rest of the illustrations, it will not be shown. Now I will be starting the front. Step 2 reads, apply interfacing to belt opening facing 5 sections, following manufacturer's directions. Edge finish outer edge. With right sides together, pin belt opening to the front matching small dots and solid lines. Stitch along broken lines. Stitch again over previous stitching to reinforce seam on woven fabrics. For all fabrics, slash along solid line through all thickness. Turn belt opening to inside, press. Here is the illustration for this step. The first part of this step is very straightforward. I will be putting interfacing on piece 5, which is simply sewing the interfacing to the fabric. Then, I will be edge finishing this according to the general sewing directions, which means I will be creating a finished edge by doing an overlock stitch. Then, with my right sides together, I will pin piece 5 to piece 1, matching the dots and lines I placed earlier. After that, I will sew along the broken lines around the edge. I chose not to stitch this again. Then, I will cut the solid line. After that, I will turn piece 5 to the inside. Next, I will press that with a hot iron. Then, I will repeat this process on the other side, as there are 2 belt openings that need to be put on. Step 3 reads, on outside, top stitch, opening edge, close to finished edge. Here is the illustration for this step. This is a really basic step. I will be sewing along the outside as close to the finished edge as possible. This will make this look so polished and complete. Then I will repeat this process on the other side. Step 4 reads, stitch side front to front, leaving an opening for arms between small dots, backstitching at small dots to reinforce seams. Clip seam allowance to small dots, being careful not to cut through stitching. Press seam above and below small dots towards side front. Here is the illustration for this step. The first part is very simple. I will be sewing the 2 pieces together, right sides facing each other, avoiding sewing between the 2 dots that I placed earlier. Then I will clip the seams so that I can complete step 5, being careful not to cut the stitches I just made. Then I will press the seam with a hot iron, making the seams go towards the side front piece. Then I will repeat on the other side. Step 5 reads, turn seam allowance between dots to outside, press. On outside, base seam allowances on opening edges close to seam. If you prefer, trim seam allowances along opening 1/4 inch 6 mm away from stitching. Top stitch side front above and below arm opening, catching in seam allowances on inside. Here is the illustration for this step. The first part of this step is simple. I'll be turning the seam allowance out so that the wrong side is facing the outside. Then I will base stitch the opening as close as I can to the edge. A base stitch is just a very large stitch meant to hold things in place or will be used for gathering. Then I will skip the trim part of the step. Finally, I will top stitch the top and bottom of the opening. Then I will repeat this on the other side. Step 6 reads, slash center of armhole facing 4 along solid line, being careful not to cut beyond small dots. On outside, pin wrong side of armhole facing to front, having slashed edges with pressed edges. Zigzag or straight stitch close to outer edges along broken line, pressing fur away from opening as you stitch. Zigzag or straight stitch close to outer edges, pushing the fur towards opening as you stitch. Here is the illustration for this step. The first part is very easy. I will be cutting a hole in the fabric between the 2 dots, being careful not to go beyond the dots. Then I will pin the fur to the seam allowance from the previous step. After that, I tried to sew this on the machine, but the fur kept catching my needle and it would not work, so I had to resort to hand sewing this. This is what the armholes should look like when done. Then I repeated this on the other side. I will then skip step 7 as I am making design A. Step 8 reads, stitch center back seam of back sections. Press seam toward one side. Stitch back to front at entire overarm seam. Press shoulder and side seams toward back. Top stitch center back and overarm seams catching in seam allowances on inside. Here is the illustration for this step. Basically, I will be sewing the back together first. After making that seam, I will press the seam to one side with a hot iron. Then I will be sewing the back to the front at the overarm seam. After that, I will press these seams towards the back with a hot iron. Then I will be doing a top stitch, sewing all 3 seams in place. Congratulations, you have the front and back of a cloak. Here's what this incomplete part of the project looks like on me. If you would like to see how I made the top and skirt of the Little Red Riding Hood costume, check out my playlist on my channel. If you would like to see the rest of the cloak project, check in next week.
Now that you have the front and back of the cloak, you are ready for the hood and belt. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. See you on the next project!